My phone buzzed during the quarterly review meeting displaying my sister Jessica's name. I almost ignored it, but something made me step outside to answer. Her voice was ice cold as she delivered the news that shattered my world. "We're using your daughter's college fund for my son's wedding. Weddings are more important than education." In the background, I heard my father Robert confirming he'd just transferred $53,000 from Emma's account. My mother Linda chimed in with casual cruelty. "Besides, she doesn't really need college." My 18-year-old daughter had been accepted to MIT just last week. I didn't scream. I hung up, called my lawyer Marcus, then contacted First National Bank immediately. The drive to my childhood home felt like traveling through a nightmare. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white as I processed what Jessica had done. Emma's college fund represented 8 years of careful planning, weekend consulting work, and every tax refund I'd received since her 10th birthday. Now it was gone, stolen by my own family for a wedding that could have been beautiful on any budget. I pulled into the driveway of the modest ranch house, where I'd grown up, noticing Jessica's silver SUV, already parked under the oak tree my father had planted when I was born. Through the kitchen window, I could see her gesturing animatedly at our parents, who sat at the worn wooden table where we'd eaten thousands of family meals. Walking through the front door felt like entering enemy territory. Jessica had transformed our mother's kitchen into a wedding planning command center. Glossy brochures showcased elaborate flower arrangements and crystal chandeliers. Sample menus featured 5-course meals with wine pairings. A thick folder labeled Brandon and Crystal's Dream Wedding sat prominently in the center, surrounded by color swatches and venue photographs. "Travis, honey, come sit down." My mother Linda said, her voice carrying that artificial sweetness she used when delivering bad news. At 69, she'd grown frail over the past year, her silver hair now thin, and her hands trembling slightly as she gestured toward an empty chair. My father Robert looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact, while fidgeting with his reading glasses. Jessica didn't look up from the wedding magazines spread before her. At 38, my sister had perfected the art of righteous indignation. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore the same condescending expression she'd used to lecture me throughout our childhood. "I suppose you're here to throw one of your famous tantrums," Jessica said, finally meeting my eyes. "But before you start screaming about fairness, let me explain why this decision makes perfect sense for everyone involved." I sat down slowly, forcing myself to remain calm. "Jessica, that money has been set aside for Emma's education since she was 10 years old. She's been accepted to MIT with early admission. Do you understand what that means?" "Of course I understand," Jessica snapped. "Your precious daughter got into some fancy school where she'll spend 4 years learning theories that won't help her in the real world. Meanwhile, my son Brandon has been working 2 jobs just to survive, and he deserves one perfect day to start his marriage right." My father cleared his throat nervously. "Son, we've been talking about this for weeks. Jessica explained how you've been doing so well with your business, and Brandon is really struggling. The boy needs help getting started in life." "What business?" I asked, confused. "I work for an engineering firm. I do some weekend consulting, but nothing that makes me wealthy." Jessica pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. "Don't play innocent with us, Travis. We know about your side income. You've been hiding money from the family, while poor Brandon can barely afford groceries." I opened the folder to find what appeared to be financial statements, showing consulting income far beyond my actual earnings. The documents looked official, complete, with letterhead and detailed breakdowns of supposed monthly payments. According to these fabricated records, I'd earned over $200,000 in consulting fees during the past year alone. "These are completely false," I said, staring at the fraudulent paperwork. "Where did you get these?" "A friend helped me understand your real financial situation," Jessica replied smugly. "You've been living a lie, pretending to struggle while you're actually making more money than the rest of us combined. It's selfish and dishonest." My mother reached across the table and patted my hand with her papery fingers. "Sweetheart, we're not angry with you for being successful. but family means sharing when times are tough. Brandon is 24 years old, and he's never had a single advantage in life. Emma has advantages because I've worked to provide them, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I've been saving for her education since she was born. That money represents thousands of hours of extra work. Jessica laughed bitterly. Oh, please, Travis. Stop acting like you're some kind of martyr. Emma can get scholarships or student loans like every other kid. But Brandon only gets one wedding day, and Crystal's family expects something special. Who is Crystal? I asked, realizing I'd never met Brandon's fiancée, despite the fact that they were apparently planning an elaborate wedding. She's the most wonderful girl. My mother said, her face lighting up for the first time since I'd arrived. She comes from a very nice family in Charleston. Her parents own a catering business, and they're expecting a certain level of celebration. Jessica nodded enthusiastically. Crystal's parents are contributing $20,000, but the venue alone costs $45,000. Then there's catering, flowers, music, photography, and all the other essentials. We calculated that $53,000 from Emma's fund will cover our portion perfectly. And if we don't pay within 72 hours, we lose the deposit and the booking. My father added apologetically. The wedding is scheduled for June 15th, and everything depends on securing this venue. I felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole into an upside-down world, where stealing from children was justified by wedding planning spreadsheets. Have any of you considered a smaller ceremony? People have beautiful weddings on modest budgets every single day. Brandon deserves better than modest, Jessica said fiercely. He spent his entire adult life struggling while you've been building your perfect little life with your perfect little daughter. It's time for someone else in this family to have something special. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Son, we raised you to share with your sister. Jessica has always looked out for Brandon, and now she's asking us to look out for him too. It seems only fair. What about Emma? I asked. Doesn't she deserve to have her future protected? Emma is smart enough to figure out college financing on her own, Jessica replied dismissively. Besides, a lot of successful people never went to college. She might be better off learning real-world skills instead of wasting 4 years studying abstract concepts. My mother nodded agreement. And honestly, dear MIT sounds terribly expensive and far from home. Maybe Emma would be happier at the community college here in town. She could live with us and save money. I stared at my parents, trying to recognize the people who had raised me to value education and hard work. Emma has a 1,500 SAT score and a 4.2 GPA. She wants to study aerospace engineering. MIT is offering her opportunities that could change her entire life trajectory. Or it could saddle her with crushing debt and unrealistic expectations, Jessica countered. Brandon is being practical by focusing on his relationship and building a stable foundation with Crystal. Marriage is more important than any career. The kitchen felt increasingly claustrophobic as I realized how thoroughly Jessica had poisoned my parents against both Emma and me. Every argument I made was met with prepared counterarguments that painted me as selfish and Emma as privileged. I need to make some phone calls, I said, standing up from the table. This conversation isn't over. Jessica smiled triumphantly. Actually, Travis, it is over. The money has already been transferred, and the deposit is being paid this afternoon. Brandon and Crystal are meeting with the wedding planner at 4 o'clock to finalize everything. As I walked toward the door, I heard my mother call after me. Please don't be angry with us, sweetheart. We're just trying to help both our grandchildren in different ways. But I was already outside dialing Marcus Thompson's number and praying that my lawyer could somehow undo the damage my family had inflicted in the name of fairness and love. Marcus Thompson's law office occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian building downtown, its mahogany-paneled walls lined with legal volumes and framed diplomas. I'd known Marcus for over a decade, ever since he'd handled my divorce and helped establish custody arrangements for Emma. His calm demeanor and sharp legal mind had guided me through some of the most difficult decisions of my life. Travis, you look like you've seen a ghost, Marcus said, gesturing for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his massive desk. At 55, Marcus still maintained the athletic build of his college football days, though his black hair now showed distinguished gray at the temples. I explained the phone call from Jessica and the surreal family meeting, watching Marcus's expression grow increasingly grave as I detailed the $53,000 transfer and my parents' bizarre justification for the theft. "Let me pull up your trust documents," Marcus said, turning to his computer. "We structured Emma's education fund as an irrevocable trust, specifically to prevent this type of unauthorized access." He scrolled through digital files, his frown deepening with each page. "Travis, according to these records, you're listed as both the grantor and the primary trustee of the education fund. No one else should have any legal authority to withdraw money or modify the account terms." "Then how did my father manage to transfer the money?" I asked, feeling a glimmer of hope that perhaps the bank had made a reversible error. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed First National Bank, requesting to speak with someone in the trust department. After being transferred twice, he finally connected with Patricia Wells, the branch manager, who had originally helped us establish Emma's fund. "Patricia, this is Marcus Thompson, representing Travis Henderson. We need to understand how someone other than Travis was able to access his daughter's education trust this morning." Marcus put the call on speaker, so I could hear the conversation. Patricia's voice sounded strained. "Mr. Thompson, I was hoping you'd call. We have a serious problem here. This morning, Travis's father, Robert Henderson, presented what appeared to be valid power of attorney documents, authorizing him to make financial decisions on Travis's behalf. My stomach dropped as I remembered signing those documents 3 years ago, when I'd undergone emergency appendix surgery. Those papers were only supposed to be valid during my medical procedure. They should have been revoked once I recovered." "That's exactly the issue," Patricia continued. "The power of attorney documents we have on file don't contain an expiration date or specific limitations. Technically, they appear to grant Robert Henderson broad financial authority over Travis's accounts." Marcus leaned forward, his jaw tightening. "Patricia, I need you to pull the original trust documents. An irrevocable educational trust should supersede any general power of attorney, especially when it comes to designated beneficiary funds." I heard papers rustling through the phone as Patricia searched her files. "Mr. Thompson, I'm looking at everything now, and I think there might have been a miscommunication when the trust was established. The account is listed as a custodial education account under the Uniform Gift to Minors Act, rather than as a formal, irrevocable trust." "That's impossible," Marcus said sharply. "I specifically instructed the bank to establish an irrevocable trust structure with Travis as trustee." "I understand your confusion," Patricia replied diplomatically, "but our records show a UGME account, which means the custodian has broad discretionary authority until the child reaches age of majority. Since Emma is 18, the account technically becomes her property, but the current custodian can still make decisions about distributions for educational purposes." Marcus and I exchanged worried glances. A UGMA account offered far less protection than the irrevocable trust we'd intended to create. "Patricia, we need to meet with you immediately to review all the documentation and determine exactly what happened here." "Of course, but I should warn you that there's another complication. Jessica Henderson contacted our legal department this morning, threatening to file a lawsuit against the bank if we attempt to reverse the transfer. She's claiming that Travis has been engaging in financial elder abuse by pressuring his parents to give him preferential access to family resources." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "She's threatening to sue the bank." Her attorney sent a formal letter this morning, alleging that Travis has been manipulating his parents' finances and discriminating against Brandon in favor of Emma. They're prepared to argue that the transfer represents a correction of prior, unfair distribution of family resources. Marcus rubbed his temples clearly, calculating the legal implications. "Patricia, regardless of Jessica's threats, we need to freeze all activity on that account immediately and schedule an emergency meeting to review the documentation. I can freeze the account, but the $53,000 transfer has already cleared and been deposited into an account at Charleston Federal Credit Union. Jessica's attorney filed paperwork this morning, establishing that account as the official wedding fund for Brandon Henderson and Crystal Morrison. After hanging up with Patricia, Marcus turned to me with a grim expression. "Travis, your sister has been planning this for months. She didn't wake up this morning and decide to steal Emma's college money. This is a coordinated attack involving legal threats, financial manipulation, and family psychological warfare." "Can we get the money back?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Eventually, yes. But it's going to be expensive and time-consuming. Jessica is gambling that you'll back down, rather than put your family through a protracted legal battle. She's counting on your desire to maintain family relationships and protect your professional reputation." Marcus pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. "The bigger problem is that while we're fighting this battle, Emma's enrollment deadline for MIT is approaching. If she can't confirm her financial aid package and deposit by the end of May, she could lose her spot." "What kind of timeline are we looking at for recovering the funds?" I asked. "If we move aggressively, and Jessica doesn't have any more surprises waiting for us, we might be able to resolve this within 6 to 8 weeks. But if she's as prepared as it seems, this could drag on for months." I felt anger building in my chest as I contemplated Jessica's calculated cruelty. She knew about Emma's MIT acceptance. She timed this perfectly to cause maximum damage, which tells us that someone has been providing her with detailed information about your financial situation and family plans, Marcus said thoughtfully. "Private investigators aren't cheap, Travis. Jessica is either spending serious money on this campaign, or someone is helping her for free." "What's our next move?" I asked, trying to focus on solutions rather than rage. Marcus stood up and walked to his window overlooking Main Street. "We're going to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy goes. I'm calling in some favors with a private investigator I trust, and we're going to learn everything there is to know about Jessica's finances, her legal strategy, and whoever is helping her target your family. And in the meantime, you're going to document every conversation and interaction you have with your family members. We're building a case not just to recover Emma's money, but to establish that Jessica has engaged in fraud and financial manipulation. When this is over, she's going to regret the day she decided to mess with your daughter's future." As I left Marcus's office, I felt like a soldier preparing for war. Jessica had chosen the battlefield, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd threatened the most important thing in my life. Now she was about to discover that a father protecting his child's dreams could be far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Sarah Martinez met Marcus and me at First National Bank the following morning, her sharp eyes taking in every detail as Patricia Wells led us to a private conference room. Sarah had spent 15 years as a police detective specializing in financial crimes before starting her own investigative firm. Her reputation for uncovering fraud and embezzlement had made her one of the most sought-after investigators in the region. "Before we examine the account records, I want to understand the family dynamics," Sarah said, pulling out a tablet and stylus. "Travis, tell me about your relationship with Jessica over the past 5 years." I thought carefully about my answer. "We've never been particularly close as adults. Jessica always resented that I went to college while she got married young and focused on raising Brandon. She's made comments over the years about me thinking I'm better than the family." "When did you last have significant contact with her?" Sarah asked. "Christmas dinner last year. She seemed unusually interested in my work and kept asking questions about my consulting projects. I thought she was just making conversation, but now I'm wondering if she was gathering intelligence." Patricia spread the account documentation across the conference table, including transaction records dating back to when Emma's fund was first established. "Gentlemen, I owe you an apology. After reviewing everything overnight, I discovered that we did make an error when the account was originally set up. Marcus leaned forward intently. What kind of error? You specifically requested an irrevocable educational trust, but our paperwork was processed as a UGMA custodial account. The difference is significant in terms of legal protections and access restrictions. Sarah studied the documents, making notes on her tablet. Patricia, I need to see all records of anyone who's made inquiries about this account over the past 18 months. Patricia pulled up computer records and began printing pages. There are several concerning entries here. Beginning in August of last year, Robert Henderson started visiting the bank regularly, asking questions about the account balance and terms. That's right around the time Emma started her senior year and began researching colleges. I said, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. But here's what's really interesting. Patricia continued handing Sarah a stack of printed records. In November, someone called claiming to be Travis and asking about procedures for withdrawing funds for educational purposes. The caller knew specific details about the account, including Emma's full name and social security number. Marcus and I exchanged alarmed glances. I never made that call, I said firmly. Sarah examined the phone records. Patricia, do you have the caller ID information from that November inquiry? The call came from a blocked number, but our internal notes indicate the caller had intimate knowledge of account details that should only be available to Travis or his immediate family. I felt a chill as I realized how thoroughly Jessica had researched my finances. She's been planning this for almost a year. Sarah continued reviewing the records, her expression growing increasingly grim. Travis, there's something else you need to see. According to these transaction records, your consulting income deposits increased significantly over the past 8 months. The account shows regular deposits of $3,000 to $4,000 every month, well above your historical pattern. I looked at the deposit records in confusion. That's not right. My consulting work is sporadic, maybe $8,000 to $10,000 total per year. I never made deposits that large. Patricia pulled up electronic images of the deposit slips. These deposits were made through our mobile app, using Travis's login credentials. Each deposit includes a memo noting, "Consulting income for Emma's education." Marcus studied the deposit images carefully. Travis, did you give anyone access to your mobile banking information? Absolutely not. I'm the only person who knows my login information. Sarah made extensive notes, then looked up with a steely expression. Someone has been making unauthorized deposits into Emma's account to inflate the balance, probably to make the $53,000 theft seem more justifiable. Jessica wanted to ensure there would be enough money to fund Brandon's wedding, while making it appear that Travis had been hiding significant income. But where did the extra money come from? I asked, trying to understand the scope of Jessica's fraud. Patricia checked additional records on her computer. The deposits originated from an account at Charleston Federal Credit Union, registered under the name JH Financial Services. That account was opened last September, with an initial deposit of $75,000. JH Financial Services, Marcus repeated. Jessica Henderson Financial Services. Sarah leaned back in her chair, pieces of the investigation coming together in her mind. Jessica established a fake business account and used it to make deposits into Emma's fund over several months. She was essentially laundering money through your daughter's education account to create the appearance that you had significant hidden income. Then, she presented fake financial statements to your parents, showing consulting income that matched the inflated account balance, Marcus added. It's an elaborate setup designed to make you look like a liar when you deny having that much money. I felt overwhelmed by the complexity of Jessica's deception. Why would she go to such extreme lengths? The original account had enough money for Emma's first year at MIT. Sarah tapped her stylus against the tablet. Because $53,000 was never the real target, Jessica needed to establish a pattern of financial dishonesty that she could use to justify taking much more money. This is just the opening move. Patricia looked uncomfortable as she checked additional computer screens. I hate to add more bad news, but there's another complication. Yesterday afternoon, Jessica's attorney filed paperwork claiming that Travis has been systematically embezzling from a family inheritance account that was supposed to benefit both Travis and Jessica equally. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. What inheritance account? Travis's grandmother left a small savings account that was distributed years ago. According to the legal filing, there was a second account containing over $100,000 that Travis allegedly accessed without Jessica's knowledge or consent. They're demanding an immediate audit of all Travis's financial activities going back 5 years. Sarah stood up and began pacing the small conference room. Jessica is playing a much bigger game than college fund theft. She's trying to systematically destroy Travis's financial credibility and legal standing. The question is, why she needs that much money, and why she's willing to go nuclear to get it. I felt like I was drowning in accusations and legal complications that grew more serious by the hour. How do we fight back against all of this? Sarah smiled for the first time since the meeting began. We're going to turn Jessica's own tactics against her. If she wants to play investigator and build files on family members, we're going to investigate her right back. I guarantee she has secrets that she doesn't want exposed. Marcus gathered the bank documents into a neat stack. Patricia, we need you to freeze all activity on Emma's original account and flag any attempts by Jessica or Robert to access additional funds. Already done, Patricia confirmed. And I'm filing an internal incident report about the unauthorized access and suspicious deposit activity. Our fraud prevention team will review everything independently. As we left the bank, Sarah turned to me with a determined expression. Travis, by this time next week, we're going to know more about Jessica's financial situation than she knows herself. Whatever she's hiding, we're going to find it. And then, we're going to use it to get Emma's money back and put a stop to these games permanently. I felt a surge of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. Jessica had started a war, but she'd chosen the wrong enemy. Now it was time to show her what happened when someone threatened my daughter's future. Sarah Martinez worked fast. Within 72 hours of our bank meeting, she'd assembled a comprehensive dossier on Jessica's financial activities that painted a picture of systematic deception and desperate scrambling to avoid personal bankruptcy. We met at Sarah's office, a converted warehouse space filled with computers, filing cabinets, and investigation charts that looked like something from a crime drama. Marcus and I sat at a conference table while Sarah presented her findings with the methodical precision of a prosecutor building a case. Jessica is in serious financial trouble. Sarah began spreading documents across the table. Her real estate business, Henderson Property Solutions, collapsed 6 months ago after a series of bad investment decisions and client lawsuits. She handed me a thick folder containing court documents and business filings. In March, Jessica purchased 3 properties in a declining neighborhood, expecting to flip them for quick profits. Instead, she discovered major structural problems that made the houses unsellable. She's facing over $80,000 in renovation costs and mortgage payments with no potential buyers. Marcus studied the financial records, shaking his head at the scope of Jessica's poor judgment. How did she finance these property purchases? That's where it gets interesting, Sarah continued. Jessica took out a home equity loan against her primary residence, maxed out several credit cards, and borrowed money from at least 3 different private lenders. She's currently behind on mortgage payments and facing foreclosure within 30 days. I felt a mixture of shock and anger as I processed the information. She's been lying to everyone about Brandon's financial situation. The whole story about him struggling and needing wedding help was completely fabricated. Sarah nodded grimly. I interviewed Brandon's coworkers at the automotive repair shop where he's employed. He's actually one of their most reliable technicians, earning decent money and saving for his own apartment. He had no idea his mother was telling people he was struggling financially. What about Crystal and the elaborate wedding plans? Marcus asked. Another fabrication, Sarah replied, pulling out more documentation. I contacted the venues Jessica claimed to have booked. None of them have any record of a reservation for Brandon Henderson or Crystal Morrison. The expensive catering contracts and floral arrangements exist only in Jessica's imagination. I stared at the evidence in disbelief. She created an entire fictional wedding to justify stealing Emma's college fund. It's worse than that, Sarah continued. Jessica has been systematically lying to multiple family members about each other's situations. She told your parents that you were wealthy and selfish. She told Brandon that you refused to help with wedding expenses. She told Crystal's family that your parents were contributing to wedding costs. Everyone believed they were being generous, while someone else was being unreasonable. Marcus leaned back in his chair, calculating legal implications. This is fraud on multiple levels. Jessica has misrepresented financial situations, created false documentation, and manipulated family relationships for financial gain. Sarah pulled out her tablet and showed us a timeline she'd created. The college fund theft was never about Brandon's wedding. Jessica needed that money to prevent losing her house and to pay off the most aggressive of her private creditors. The wedding story was a cover that would explain the missing money while making Travis look like the villain for objecting. How did she get access to my bank account information to make those fake deposits? I asked. That required help from someone with technical skills, Sarah replied. I traced the source of those deposits to a computer at your parents' house. Jessica has been visiting them weekly for months, supposedly to help with household tasks and errands. I felt betrayed on multiple levels as I realized how thoroughly Jessica had manipulated our elderly parents. She used their trust and access to gather information she needed to frame me. Your father innocently mentioned details about Emma's college plans and your work schedule during family conversations, Sarah explained. Jessica used that information to time her attacks and create believable stories about your supposed wealth and secretiveness. Marcus examined the timeline Sarah had created. Travis, your sister, didn't just wake up one day and decide to steal from Emma. This is a months-long campaign of financial manipulation and family psychological warfare. Sarah turned to a new section of her report. There's something else you need to know. Jessica hired a private investigator named Derek Collins to surveil your activities and finances. Collins is not licensed in this state and has a history of engaging in questionable tactics for clients who pay cash. What kind of surveillance? I asked, feeling increasingly violated. Collins followed you to work, photographed your home and car, and attempted to access your employment records. He also posed as a potential client to learn about your consulting work and identify your income sources. Marcus made notes on his legal pad. That's stalking and possibly identity theft. Jessica has committed multiple felonies in her campaign against Travis. Sarah smiled grimly. Collins made one crucial mistake. He took detailed photos and kept meticulous records of his surveillance activities. When Jessica couldn't pay his full fee last month, Collins kept copies of everything as insurance against non-payment. Are you saying this investigator is willing to cooperate with us? Marcus asked hopefully. For the right price and immunity from prosecution, Collins is ready to provide everything he collected during his investigation of Travis. He's also willing to testify about Jessica's instructions to find information that could be used to discredit Travis in a family dispute. I felt like we'd finally gained an advantage in Jessica's war against my family. What's our next move? Sarah gathered her documents into organized stacks. We're going to give Jessica an opportunity to confess and return Emma's money voluntarily. If she refuses, we'll expose every aspect of her financial fraud and manipulation campaign. Marcus stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Travis, before we move forward, you need to understand that confronting Jessica directly will end any possibility of maintaining family relationships. Once we reveal what we know about her activities, there's no going back to pretending everything is normal. I thought about Emma's dreams of studying aerospace engineering at MIT and the 8 years of careful savings that Jessica had stolen in a single morning. My daughter's future is more important than protecting Jessica from the consequences of her own actions. Let's do whatever it takes to get Emma's money back. Sarah packed her files into a secure briefcase. I'll arrange a family meeting, where Jessica will have one chance to tell the truth and make things right. If she continues lying and manipulating, we'll use everything we've discovered to destroy her credibility and recover every penny she's stolen. As we left Sarah's office, I felt ready for the final confrontation with Jessica. She'd built her campaign on lies and manipulation, counting on my desire to avoid family conflict. But she'd made one fatal miscalculation. She'd underestimated how far a father would go to protect his child's dreams and future. I called my parents and arranged a family dinner for the following Sunday, telling them I wanted to discuss a fair resolution that would protect everyone's interests. Jessica agreed to attend, probably expecting me to surrender completely to her demands and manipulation tactics. Sarah provided me with a digital recording device no larger than a button sewn into the collar of my shirt. Marcus briefed me on legal questioning techniques that would encourage Jessica to elaborate on her lies while inadvertently confessing to her crimes. We'd planned every aspect of the evening to give Jessica enough rope to hang herself. My parents' house felt different when I arrived that Sunday afternoon. The familiar comfort of childhood memories now seemed contaminated by Jessica's months of manipulation and lies. Linda had prepared her famous pot roast, with all the traditional sides, probably hoping that good food would smooth over family tensions and restore harmony. Jessica arrived 15 minutes late, making an entrance that demanded attention and established her expectation of being accommodated. She wore an expensive-looking navy dress that I now realized she probably couldn't afford, along with jewelry that matched her carefully constructed image of success and respectability. Before we begin dinner, I said, taking my seat at the family table, "I want to apologize for my reaction earlier this week. I was shocked and defensive, but I've had time to think about what's best for the whole family." Jessica looked pleased with what she interpreted as my capitulation. "I'm glad you've come to your senses, Travis. We're all family here, and family takes care of each other." My father, Robert, looked relieved, clearly hoping the conflict would be resolved without further drama. Linda bustled around the kitchen, serving portions and chattering nervously about neutral topics like the weather and her garden. "Jessica, I want to understand the wedding plans better," I said, encouraging her to elaborate on her fabricated story. "When did Brandon and Crystal decide on such an elaborate celebration?" "Crystal comes from a very traditional family," Jessica replied, warming to her favorite topic. "Her parents own Morrison Catering in Charleston, and they're expecting a wedding that reflects their business reputation. Brandon wants to give Crystal everything she's ever dreamed of." I nodded supportively, though I knew from Sarah's investigation that Morrison Catering had never heard of Crystal or any wedding plans involving the Henderson family. "It sounds like Brandon is really committed to making Crystal happy. He's worked so hard for everything he has." Jessica continued building her story with additional fictional details. 2 jobs, overtime shifts, saving every penny. But it's still not enough for the kind of wedding Crystal deserves. Linda served dessert while elaborating on Jessica's narrative. "That sweet boy has never had any advantages in life. It's only fair that the family help him have one perfect day." I maintained my supportive expression, while Jessica grew increasingly comfortable with her lies. "I admire Brandon's work ethic, but I'm still concerned about using Emma's college money. Have you explored other financing options for the wedding?" Jessica's expression hardened slightly. "Travis, we've been through this. You have resources that the rest of us don't have. Your consulting business brings in much more money than you've admitted to the family." "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied carefully. "My consulting work is pretty limited." Jessica pulled out the same manila folder she'd shown me earlier in the week, but now it contained additional fabricated documents. "Stop pretending you're struggling when you're actually making over $200,000 annually in consulting fees. We have documentation proving your real income level." She spread the fake financial statements across the dining table, pointing to specific line items that supposedly proved my hidden wealth. The documents looked increasingly sophisticated, with detailed breakdowns of fictional client payments and project descriptions. "These are complete fabrications," I said truthfully. I've never received payments from most of these supposed clients. Then explain this, Jessica said triumphantly, pulling out what appeared to be bank statements showing large consulting deposits. These records come directly from your own financial institution. The forged bank statements looked remarkably authentic, complete with official letterhead and transaction codes. Jessica had invested considerable time and money in creating documentation that would convince our elderly parents of my supposed financial dishonesty. My father examined the fake bank statements with growing concern. Son, if these numbers are accurate, you've been making far more money than you've led us to believe. But there's more. Jessica continued, clearly enjoying what she believed was her moment of total victory. These financial records show that Travis has been secretly accessing an inheritance account that was supposed to be shared equally between both of us. She produced another folder containing what appeared to be legal documents related to our grandmother's estate. According to these fabricated papers, grandmother had established a trust fund containing $147,000 that was meant to benefit both Jessica and me equally. Our grandmother never had that kind of money. I protested, but Jessica was ready with an explanation for everything. She invested her savings conservatively over many years and never told anyone about the full amount, Jessica said smoothly. The trust was designed to help both her grandchildren, but Travis discovered the account 5 years ago and has been withdrawing money without my knowledge. The forged documents showed a detailed transaction history with my name on numerous withdrawal authorizations totaling $47,000 over a 5-year period. Jessica had created an elaborate paper trail suggesting systematic theft from family resources. Linda looked at me with disappointment and confusion. Travis, honey, why wouldn't you tell us about your grandmother's trust fund? And why wouldn't you share it with Jessica? I felt trapped in an increasingly surreal situation where every truthful answer made me appear dishonest, while Jessica's lies seemed to be supported by sophisticated documentation. None of these documents are real. Grandmother left us each a small savings account that we split years ago. Then you won't mind if we have an independent audit of all your financial activities, Jessica said, pulling out one final document. I've already contacted a forensic accountant who can review everything and determine exactly how much money you've taken from family resources. She handed me what appeared to be a legal notice demanding full disclosure of all bank accounts, investment holdings, and business income for the past 5 years. The document threatens civil litigation and criminal prosecution if I refuse to cooperate with the investigation. Robert cleared his throat nervously. Son, if you have nothing to hide, maybe an audit would clear up all these questions about your income and the inheritance money. I realized that Jessica had systematically destroyed my credibility with our parents by creating a web of lies so complex and well-documented that the truth seemed implausible by comparison. Every denial I offered only reinforced their growing belief that I was hiding significant financial resources. Jessica, I said quietly, are you absolutely certain that you want to pursue this path? Once we start involving lawyers and accountants in family matters, there's no going back to normal relationships. She smiled confidently, clearly believing she'd maneuvered me into complete surrender. I'm fighting for fairness and honesty, Travis. If you've been taking advantage of the family's trust, then it's time for everyone to know the truth. As the evening ended with threats of legal action from both sides, I realized that Jessica had committed herself so completely to her lies that backing down was no longer possible for her. She'd created a situation where only total victory or complete destruction remained as options. Walking to my car, I activated my phone to send a prearranged signal to Sarah and Marcus. Jessica had just confessed to multiple crimes while threatening additional legal action based on forged documents. Tomorrow, she would discover what happened when someone built their entire strategy on lies and underestimated their opponent's willingness to fight back. I called an emergency family meeting for the following evening, asking Marcus, Sarah, and Patricia Wells from the bank to attend as witnesses. When my parents asked why I was bringing outsiders into family business, I told them that Jessica had made the situation legal rather than personal when she'd threatened to involve forensic accountants and file fraud charges. Jessica arrived at my parents' house wearing the same confident expression she displayed throughout her campaign of lies and manipulation. She brought a briefcase full of additional forged documents and what appeared to be a prepared legal statement summarizing her allegations against me. "I'm glad you finally decided to face the truth," Jessica said, as everyone gathered in the living room. "Once these professionals review your real financial situation, the family will understand how you've been taking advantage of everyone's trust." Marcus sat beside me with his own briefcase containing Sarah's investigation results and Patricia's banking documentation. "Jessica, before we examine Travis's financial records, we'd like to discuss some questions about your recent activities and claims." Sarah opened her tablet and began presenting evidence with the methodical precision she developed during her police career. "Jessica, can you explain the business registration for JH Financial Services that you established last September?" Jessica's confident expression faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've never registered any business by that name." Sarah showed her the official business filing documents. "These records from the Secretary of State's office show that you registered JH Financial Services as a financial consulting company with yourself as the sole proprietor and officer." "That must be some kind of mistake in the paperwork," Jessica said, but her voice carried less conviction than before. Marcus pulled out bank records from Charleston Federal Credit Union. "Jessica, these documents show that you opened an account for JH Financial Services with an initial deposit of $75,000. Can you explain the source of those funds?" Jessica examined the bank statements, her face growing pale as she realized the scope of evidence aligned against her. "I don't understand how you got private financial information about my accounts." Patricia Wells spoke for the first time since arriving. "Ms. Henderson, these records were obtained through proper legal channels after First National Bank discovered unauthorized deposits into Emma Henderson's education account, originating from your JH Financial Services account." My father Robert looked confused and worried. "Jessica, honey, what are they talking about? What unauthorized deposits?" Sarah displayed transaction records on her tablet screen. "Mr. Henderson, for the past 8 months, Jessica has been making deposits into Emma's college fund using money from her business account. She then used those inflated account balances to create false documentation, suggesting that Travis had been hiding consulting income from the family." Linda sat down heavily in her favorite chair. "I don't understand what's happening here. Jessica, why would you put money into Emma's account if you were planning to take it back out?" Jessica realized her carefully constructed lies were collapsing, but she made one final desperate attempt to maintain her story. "I was trying to help Emma save more money for college, while also helping Brandon with his wedding expenses. There's nothing illegal about family members contributing to education funds." Marcus opened his briefcase and began distributing copies of court documents and financial records. "Jessica, we also need to discuss Henderson Property Solutions and the 3 properties you purchased that are now facing foreclosure." Jessica's face went completely white as she recognized documents that should have been confidential. "How did you get information about my business investments?" Sarah continued her presentation with devastating efficiency. "Your real estate business collapsed 6 months ago, leaving you with over $80,000 in debt and facing foreclosure on your primary residence. The story about Brandon needing wedding money was fabricated to justify taking Emma's college fund to pay your personal creditors." My parents stared at Jessica in shock as the full scope of her deception became apparent. Robert cleared his throat nervously. "Jessica, is this true? Are you in financial trouble?" "I've had some business setbacks," Jessica admitted weakly. "But that doesn't change the fact that Travis has been hiding money from the family." Marcus pulled out the most damaging evidence Sarah had collected. "Jessica, we have signed statements from Derek Collins, the private investigator you hired to surveil Travis and gather information about his finances." He handed Jessica copies of Collins's surveillance reports and invoices for services rendered. Collins documented your instructions to find anything that could be used to discredit Travis in a family dispute over financial resources. Jessica stared at the investigator's reports, recognizing her own handwriting on notes about targeting my relationships with our parents and undermining my credibility regarding Emma's education fund. Sarah delivered the final blow to Jessica's remaining credibility. We also contacted Morrison Catering in Charleston. They have no record of any Crystal Morrison or Henderson family wedding reservations. The expensive wedding venue contracts you showed your parents are completely fabricated. Linda began crying softly as she processed the full extent of her daughter's lies. Jessica, there is no expensive wedding. You made up all those stories about Brandon needing help. And Brandon has a stable job earning decent money, Sarah continued. He's been saving for his own apartment and had no idea you were telling people he was struggling financially. Robert looked at Jessica with a mixture of disappointment and heartbreak. Honey, why would you lie to us about so many things? We would have helped you with your business problems if you just asked honestly. Jessica finally broke down completely, her months of careful planning and manipulation crumbling under the weight of documented evidence. I didn't know how to tell you that I'd failed at everything. The business, the investments, all of it. I thought if I could just get enough money to start over, I could pay everyone back and fix everything. By destroying Travis's relationship with his family and stealing from Emma's college fund, Marcus asked sternly. I convinced myself that Travis wouldn't miss the money because he's always been successful at everything he tries, Jessica said through tears. It wasn't fair that I was struggling while he had everything figured out. My mother stood up and walked over to Jessica, taking her hands gently. Sweetheart, we raised you better than this. Lying and stealing from your niece's education fund isn't solving your problems. It's creating much bigger ones. Sarah closed her tablet and looked directly at Jessica. The $53,000 you transferred from Emma's account needs to be returned immediately, along with the additional funds you deposited to create false account balances. You're also going to sign a confession detailing your fraud and manipulation campaign. Jessica looked around the room at faces filled with disappointment, anger, and broken trust. What if I can't pay back all the money right away? My business accounts are already frozen, and I'm facing foreclosure. Marcus pulled out legal documents he'd prepared in advance. You're going to sign over the titles to your 3 investment properties to a trust that will manage their sale and use the proceeds to repay Emma's education fund. You're also going to enter a court-supervised debt counseling program and agree to have no access to family financial accounts. And if I refuse? Jessica asked weakly. Then we file criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and elder abuse, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. You'll face prison time instead of just financial consequences and family disappointment. My father spoke for the first time since learning about Jessica's deception. Jessica, honey, you need to do the right thing here. Travis and Emma don't deserve to suffer because you made bad business decisions. Jessica signed the legal documents with trembling hands, effectively admitting to months of systematic fraud and manipulation. As she handed the papers back to Marcus, she looked at me with genuine remorse for the first time in years. Travis, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely sorry for what I've put you and Emma through. I felt a complex mixture of anger, relief, and sadness as I watched my sister face the consequences of her choices. Jessica, I hope you get the help you need to rebuild your life honestly. But Emma's education and future will always be my first priority. As everyone prepared to leave, my parents approached me with tears in their eyes. Robert spoke first. Son, we owe you a tremendous apology. We should have questioned Jessica's stories instead of believing everything she told us about your finances. Linda hugged me tightly. We're so proud of how you've protected Emma through all of this. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who fights for her dreams. Walking to my car, I felt exhausted but victorious. Emma's college fund would be restored. Jessica would face appropriate consequences for her actions, and my family would heal stronger than before. Most importantly, my daughter would attend MIT with the financial security I'd worked 8 years to provide. 3 weeks after Jessica's confession, Emma's college fund had been fully restored, with additional interest and penalties that Jessica paid from the sale of her investment properties. Marcus structured a legal settlement that protected Emma's education money while giving Jessica a path toward financial rehabilitation rather than prison time. I picked up Emma from her part-time job at the local bookstore to share the news that her MIT dreams were secure. At 18, she possessed the same quiet determination that had earned her early admission to one of the world's most prestigious engineering programs. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the confident smile of someone who'd never doubted her ability to achieve ambitious goals. "Dad, you look different," Emma said as we drove toward our favorite restaurant to celebrate. "More relaxed, I guess. Has the family drama finally been resolved?" I'd tried to shield Emma from the worst details of Jessica's fraud and manipulation campaign, but she'd understood that her college fund was threatened and that adult family members were behaving badly. "Your college money is safe, and everyone has learned some important lessons about honesty and communication." "What's going to happen to Aunt Jessica?" Emma asked thoughtfully. "I know she did something really wrong, but she's still family." I pulled into the restaurant parking lot, considering how to explain complex family dynamics to someone who'd soon be studying rocket science. Jessica is getting professional help with her financial problems and learning better ways to handle stress and disappointment. Sometimes people make terrible choices when they feel desperate. Will she go to jail? No, but she has to pay back everything she took and follow strict rules about money management for the next few years. She's also required to get counseling to understand why she thought lying and stealing were acceptable solutions to her problems. Emma nodded gravely. "And Brandon? Is he embarrassed about what his mom did?" "Brandon was horrified to learn that his mother used his wedding as a cover story for stealing from your education fund," I replied. "He's actually asked if he could apologize to you personally." "I'd like that. Brandon was always nice to me at family gatherings, and it's not his fault his mother made terrible decisions." We found a quiet booth inside the restaurant, and I handed Emma an official-looking envelope containing her updated financial aid package and enrollment confirmation from MIT. Her eyes lit up as she read through the documents that confirmed her dreams were becoming reality. "Dad, I know you've been working extra jobs and weekends to save this money for years," Emma said softly. "I promise I won't waste the opportunity you've given me." "Emma, this money represents more than just tuition and expenses," I replied. "It represents the belief that education opens doors and creates possibilities that change entire family lines. Your success at MIT will inspire other kids in our family to pursue their own ambitious dreams." "What do you mean?" "Your cousin Brandon called me yesterday. He's been accepted to community college for automotive technology training. He wants to eventually transfer to a 4-year engineering program and design better car safety systems." Jessica's younger sister called too. She's decided to go back to school for nursing after 20 years of thinking she wasn't smart enough for college. Emma smiled broadly. "So something good came out of all this family craziness?" "Something amazing came out of it," I confirmed. Everyone realized that supporting each other's education and growth is more important than competing for resources or feeling jealous about different types of success. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Brandon and his fiancée Crystal, who had driven 2 hours from Charleston to meet with Emma and apologize for his mother's actions. Brandon looked nervous, but determined as he approached our table. "Emma, I'm Brandon, and this is Crystal," he said awkwardly. "I wanted to tell you how sorry I am about everything my mom did with your college fund." Emma stood up and hugged her cousin warmly. "Brandon, you didn't do anything wrong. Congratulations on your engagement and your acceptance to automotive tech school." Crystal turned out to be a delightful young woman who worked as a veterinary technician and shared Emma's love of science and problem-solving. The 4 of us spent 2 hours talking about career goals, family relationships, and the wedding ceremony that Brandon and Crystal were planning on their own modest budget. We decided we'd rather start our marriage debt-free than spend a fortune on one day, Crystal explained. Brandon's mom kept pushing for this elaborate celebration that would have cost more than we make in a year. It didn't feel like us at all. The simple ceremony sounds much more romantic, Emma replied. Would you like me to help with any DIY decorations or planning? I love creative projects. As Brandon and Crystal left, Brandon turned back to me with genuine gratitude. Uncle Travis, thank you for not pressing criminal charges against my mom. She's getting the help she needs, and our family has a chance to heal instead of being torn apart completely. The following week, I received a handwritten letter from Jessica, mailed from the Financial Counseling Center, where she was participating in an intensive rehabilitation program. Her words were thoughtful and humble, expressing genuine remorse for the pain she'd caused and commitment to rebuilding relationships through consistent honesty. Travis, she wrote, I realize now that my jealousy and financial desperation turned me into someone I didn't recognize. You were protecting Emma's future the way any good parent should, and I was trying to destroy that protection for my own selfish benefit. I hope someday you and Emma can forgive me for the terrible choices I made. 2 months later, my parents invited the entire family to a reconciliation dinner, where Jessica formally apologized to everyone she'd deceived and manipulated. She looked healthier than she had in years, having learned to manage stress through counseling rather than denial and deception. I want everyone to understand that what I did wasn't about the money, Jessica said to the assembled family. It was about my own shame and fear of being seen as a failure. I convinced myself that Travis didn't deserve success because I felt like such a failure myself. Robert and Linda had also received counseling to understand how they'd been manipulated and to develop better communication skills for dealing with adult children's financial requests. They established clear boundaries about family money while maintaining their desire to help when appropriate and possible. We learned that love doesn't mean saying yes to everything your children ask for, Linda explained. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable bad decisions or dishonest behavior. Emma's graduation party in June became a celebration not just of her academic achievements, but of our family's commitment to supporting each other's growth through honesty and mutual respect. She received congratulations cards from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all expressing pride in her accomplishments and excitement about her engineering career. As Emma prepared to leave for MIT in August, she gave me a framed photo of herself in cap and gown, with an inscription that brought tears to my eyes. To the dad who taught me that dreams are worth protecting, and families grow stronger when they choose truth over comfortable lies. Standing in her empty bedroom after helping her move into the dormitory, I reflected on the lessons this experience had taught all of us. Jessica's desperate attempt to steal Emma's future had instead strengthened our family's commitment to education and honest communication. Brandon was pursuing his own college dreams, inspired by Emma's example, and supported by parents who now understood the difference between enabling and encouragement. Most importantly, Emma was beginning her aerospace engineering studies with not just financial security, but also the knowledge that her father would fight any battle necessary to protect her opportunities and dreams. She'd learned that standing up for what's right sometimes requires difficult conversations and uncomfortable confrontations, but that integrity always proves more valuable than temporary peace. The college fund that Jessica had tried to steal now seemed like more than just money in an account. It represented the belief that investing in the next generation's education and dreams creates ripples of positive change that extend far beyond individual families. Emma called from MIT during her second week of classes, bubbling with excitement about her professor's classmates and the incredible laboratory facilities where she was already participating in research projects. Dad, I'm exactly where I belong, studying exactly what I love with classmates who are just as passionate about aerospace engineering as I am. And how does it feel to know that your education is secure? I asked. It feels like freedom, Emma replied. Freedom to focus on learning and growing, instead of worrying about money. Freedom to take intellectual risks and explore ideas that might not have practical applications for years. Freedom to become the engineer I've always dreamed of being. As we ended our call, I realized that protecting Emma's college fund had been about much more than preserving money for tuition and expenses. It had been about defending her right to pursue ambitious dreams without limitation, to explore her full intellectual potential without financial constraints, and to become the person she was meant to be. Have you ever had to fight to protect someone else's dreams when they were threatened by family members who couldn't see beyond their own immediate needs? Sometimes the greatest gift we can give the people we love is the security to pursue their passions without fear or compromise. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how families can support each other's growth while maintaining honesty and respect. Please share your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe to hear more stories about family challenges and triumphs, and share it with anyone who might benefit from understanding how love sometimes requires difficult choices. Thank you for listening to Emma's story and mine, and I hope your own family relationships continue growing stronger through truth support and unwavering commitment to each other's dreams and potential.